The lioness lay slumped on the low green grass of the savannah, her breath shallow and ragged, a toxic foam streaking her lips. She had likely consumed poison bait left by poachers, a brutal and silent threat in a land where survival was already a constant battle. Beside her, the magnificent male lion, the color of burnished gold, paced back and forth, a deep, continuous growl rumbling in his chest. His eyes, usually fierce and commanding, were wide with a raw, intelligent fear. He nudged her gently, a soft, desperate plea for her to rise, but she remained unresponsive. He understood the prognosis. Without intervention, she would perish. A great shadow of grief passed over his face. After a final, agonizing look at his fallen mate, the male lion made a difficult choice. He turned his back on her, leaving her vulnerable to the dangers of the bush, and walked away, driven by a flicker of hope that lay beyond the acacia trees. What kind of desperation would make a king leave his queen? Stick around, because the most shocking part is how this powerful male lion found the courage to ask for help. But his quest for aid began in a way no human, especially Ranger Kofi, could ever have predicted, creating a face-to-face moment that defied everything Kofi knew about the wild. Ranger Kofi, a man whose life was dedicated to the silent rhythms of the savannah, was momentarily distracted. His jeep was parked near a scattered grove of acacia trees, the perfect vantage point for observing a large herd of zebra grazing peacefully in the distance. The late morning was calm, but the stillness was shattered not by a roar of aggression, but by an unsettling sound of heavy footfalls right beside his vehicle. Kofi's head snapped around. Standing barely 5 feet away was the male lion, a massive creature whose mane framed a face contorted by something profoundly human: panic. Kofi froze, his hand instinctively moving toward his tranquilizer rifle, assessing the danger. The male lion was acting erratically. It circled the jeep once, a low, urgent moan escaping its throat, then unexpectedly lunged forward. Instead of attacking, the male lion did something incomprehensible. It rose onto its hind legs, its colossal weight supported solely by its powerful back limbs. It leaned into the vehicle, placing its 2 front paws flat against the jeep's dusty bonnet. Kofi could see the lion's ribs heaving, the sheer desperation radiating from its eyes. The behavior was entirely unprecedented. He cautiously stepped out of the jeep, his senses screaming a warning, yet a deeper instinct urging him forward. As Kofi stood on the low green grass, the male lion dropped its front paws from the jeep, then rose again, its amber eyes locked onto Kofi's. This time, it pressed its 2 front paws together, palm to palm, in a gesture universally recognized as an entreaty, a desperate prayer. Kofi gasped, stunned. He recognized the raw, intelligent anguish in its gaze. This was not a predator challenging territory. This was a plea for help. Fact presenter, for a species whose communication relies on scent, posture, and roaring, this sophisticated, human-like gesture is a staggering display of cognitive and emotional intelligence. Scientists speculate that extreme emotional distress can override natural instincts, pushing animals to adopt novel communication methods. Kofi slowly lowered his weapon. "All right," he whispered, "show me." The male lion dropped back to all fours, then turned and began to move, glancing over its shoulder every few paces, ensuring the ranger was following. We're just seconds away from the location of the lioness. But first, comment below if you've ever seen an animal show a sign of emotion this clearly. As a male lion finally turned and bolted through a patch of tall grass, Kofi didn't hesitate. He jumped into his jeep, knowing he was chasing a desperate plea and hoping he wasn't driving straight into a trap. Kofi sped across the uneven terrain, his vehicle kicking up dust on the low green grass. The male lion moved with purpose, its panic replaced by a focused urgency. After a tense chase, they veered around a thicket of acacia, and Kofi slammed on the brakes. The sight that greeted him confirmed the severity of the situation and immediately amplified the danger. The lioness was exactly where the male lion had left her, still prone and struggling to breathe, but she was no longer alone. A hungry clan of hyenas, their backs humped and their eyes gleeful, had spotted the opportunity and were already circling their incapacitated prey, sniffing the air with malicious anticipation. This predatory clan of hyenas had closed in, taking advantage of the male lion's absence. Seeing the threat, the male lion released a primal, earth-shaking roar, a sound of protective fury that sent the nearest clan of hyenas scattering momentarily. The male lion positioned himself between his mate and the scavengers, a formidable golden shield. Kofi, recognizing the clock was ticking, didn't wait. He grabbed his medical kit and sprinted toward the crisis zone, relying completely on the male lion's protective focus. He reached the lioness and immediately dropped to his knees, ignoring the gnashing teeth of the surrounding clan of hyenas. The male lion stood guard, its massive body trembling slightly, its eyes flicking between the ranger working on the lioness and the ever-encroaching clan of hyenas. Storyteller, this was a moment of profound, unnatural truce. The male lion was actively defending a human who was tending to his mate. Its loyalty to the lioness was so absolute that it temporarily surpassed its territorial instincts, placing trust in the very species it was naturally meant to avoid. The clan of hyenas remained stubbornly close, shifting their weight, their patience worn thin by the promise of an easy meal. Kofi quickly cleaned the foam from the lioness's mouth and administered a preliminary injection of broad-spectrum antitoxin, but her pulse was weak. He looked up at the fierce, watchful eyes of the male lion, who had not moved an inch. If you believe in the power of this unlikely trust, hit the like button now. Kofi quickly assessed the situation. The lioness was too far gone for field treatment. The only choice was a daring evacuation. But would the male lion, the same creature who begged for help, allow his mate to be taken away? Kofi acted fast, his radio crackling with an emergency request. Severe poisoning, immediate transport needed. Within minutes, though it felt like hours, a second jeep arrived carrying a veterinary team, equipped with a large transport crate. The arrival of the new vehicle and the additional human figures further agitated the surrounding clan of hyenas, which retreated slightly but maintained their threatening perimeter. The tension was palpable. Any sudden move could break the fragile trust established between Kofi and the male lion, turning a rescue into a brutal conflict. The veterinary team worked with quiet, practiced efficiency. They gently moved the critically ill lioness onto a stretcher and into the transport cage. Throughout the whole ordeal, the male lion remained a steadfast sentinel. It watched every action, every movement of the crate, without a single aggressive lunge, its intense observation betraying its inner torment. Storyteller, this was the ultimate test of faith. The male lion was allowing its only hope, its mate, to be taken by strangers, abandoning its primal instinct to protect her from other beings. It was an agonizing, necessary sacrifice. As the transport vehicle prepared to leave, Kofi made eye contact with the male lion. He spoke softly, reassuringly, a human voice bridging the vast chasm between species. The male lion let out a mournful, rumbling call, took 2 hesitant steps forward, and then stopped. It watched the jeep disappear into the distance, carrying the love of its life, but did not follow. The trust was complete. Kofi stayed behind, a mix of relief and duty flooding his senses. While the lioness began her long recovery process at the veterinary center, Kofi immediately started his parallel mission, justice. He scoured the area where the lioness was found, examining the low green grass and the base of the acacia trees for clues. His dedication paid off. He found remnants of wire snares and, crucially, a discarded plastic container with residue that matched the poison. His swift investigation and tracking skills led him to the temporary camp of a small group of poachers targeting large carnivores. Kofi's relentless work in the following days culminated in the successful apprehension of the individuals responsible for the poisoning. Opinionator, The story here shifts from rescue to responsibility. Kofi's commitment highlights that conservation isn't just about treating symptoms. It's about eliminating the root cause of these cruelties and enforcing justice for the wild. Share this video to support the rangers who fight against poaching every day. But the true emotional payoff, the final chapter in this extraordinary story of love and trust, was waiting on the day the lioness was strong enough to return to the wild and face her mate. Weeks later, under the soft light of a rising sun, Kofi drove the transport vehicle back onto the familiar stretch of savanna. Inside, the lioness, though still a little weak, was alert and ready. When the crate door was lowered, she stepped out onto the low green grass, sniffing the air. The male lion had been waiting nearby, a lone figure of anxiety and hope. The moment he saw her, his restraint broke. He bounded forward, not with aggression, but with a deep, rumbling joy. Their reunion was tender. They rubbed heads, their bodies weaving together in a silent, powerful affirmation of their bond. It was a scene of pure, unconditional love restored. Kofi watched from a respectful distance, his chest heavy with emotion. The lioness was safe, the poachers were caught, and the balance had been momentarily restored. He prepared to leave, satisfied with his duty. But as he turned back toward his jeep, the male lion separated from his mate and slowly approached Kofi. This was the moment of truth. Kofi stood still, allowing the king of the savannah to dictate the terms of their final interaction. The male lion advanced until it was right beside the ranger. Then, instead of a roar or a display of dominance, it gently lowered its massive head and deliberately nudged its forehead against Kofi's arm, a gesture that was unmistakably one of respect and gratitude, the ultimate reward for a conservationist. Kofi gently stroked the lion's flank, a silent, mutual acknowledgement passing between them. This gesture of thanks, delivered by a creature of such power, transcended language and species. It was a profound confirmation that the male lion's earlier prayer was a plea from a sentient, emotional being whose deep love for its mate led it to trust a human. Opinionator. The story of the desperate male lion shows us that the line between human and animal is often blurred by the universal language of love and compassion. We are not just guardians of the wild. We are interconnected with it, and our empathy can save lives. Fact presenter. Conservation success often hinges on these moments of trust. They remind us of the fragility and value of every wild bond. This single act of desperation saved a life and forged an unbreakable bond. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and turn on notifications to see more amazing stories from the front lines of wildlife conservation. Watch our next video and remember, compassion is the universal language.